a great Friday. No racing for me this evening. Couple of reasons. One, yeah, I'm being a little bit of a diva on this one, but it's hotter than hell and it's humid. But the main reason why is I don't really have a tire right now, so I'm saving up those dollars to get that set of ET Street R's. Trying to make a pass on these Nitto Tri-5 R2s. How many more letters or consonants or numbers can you throw in there? Anyway, really not, I hate to say, I'm not going to say it's not worth my time, but to be honest with you, if I'm there to get some solid data, it's not going to do me a whole lot of good to take the car to the drag strip on a tire that I know is going to break loose. And if there's any semblance to how the thing runs on the street, especially from a roll, it's probably not going to go well for me. But at any rate, so what comes up quite a bit, a lot in the live shows, but I'll get pinged on, on messengers or whatever, as far as what modifications work. What can I get out of a cold air kit? What can I get out of a tune? What will long tubes get you? What will stanky tie bars and collars get you? What? All of those things. And I figured, I had done, and this is the funny thing, I had done a couple of videos where I had said, Hemis, modern Hemis, what works? Modern Hemis, what doesn't work? And had given some pretty, what I thought was fairly well, illustrated, if you will, examples of how and why those mods either work or don't work. But it basically bears repeating. And the reason why I say that it bears repeating, number one, is a lot of folks don't want to go through that playlist and start digging out, different playlists in there. And I get that. But number two, the questions are so prevalent that I wanted to answer some and give a little bit more of an in-depth reason as to why they work or why they don't work. I also wanted to do this on the live chat as opposed to doing it on a separate video because, well, it's complicated. And to go over one specific topic, I could bore somebody to sleep with just explaining why long tube headers work, but they really don't work on a 6.4 or on a Hellcat versus how they kind of do work on a 5.7. That's a video in and of itself, right? So what I wanted to do is have a little bit of interaction. If you guys have questions about specific parts, or if you've seen some of the videos where I've specifically tested a part and wanted to know a little bit more about those parts, chime in, let me know, and we can talk about those things. First, let me check in with everybody that's come in so far. Let's see, we've got Rift is in saying, hey, what's up, Rift? Tommy's checking in, saying, finally caught you live. Thanks for joining up. TU got the fist pump. What's up? I like it. Ryan is saying, what's up, B? What's up, Ryan? DSRT saying, what up, B? Got the arm flex. I like it. What's up, D? Sinister is saying, happy Friday. Happy Friday to you. As Cash, the Mopar Master. Well, I'm working on it. I'm trying. Dean Hunter saying, what up, B? What up, man? Let's see. Rip saying he put his unlocked PCM in the cat and is trying to tune it, but even though I already paid for tunes for him, Hemi Fever, it's physically impossible to get a hold of that guy. Well, maybe he's just a little bit busy, but keep bringing him up. TU saying, B, good thing Ford's come out with the 2020 Bronco because that helped force Jeep into coming out with the 2021 392 Wrangler. So let's chat about that for just a second. That's also a topic I wanted to get into, but I didn't really know how to transition into that new video, standalone video, something like that. But the Bronco, it's starting to grow on me. It really is. But here's the thing. I can't get all worked up and lathered up about a 392 Wrangler until they put the 5.7 in the Wrangler as an option. Main reason why I'm saying that is, look, we've seen and tuned a lot of 5.7 Wranglers, a lot of 392 Wranglers, which is probably the most popular swap, or one of the more popular swaps. LS swap Wranglers, Hellcat swap Wranglers. None of this stuff is new. I mean, we've been seeing this for a while. I've driven them. They're kind of fun to drive. But they've got to have that corporate V8 working well in that Jeep in all instances. We're talking Moab, we're talking at the beach, we're talking in the dunes, we're talking just cruising around. It's got to be able to perform like every other engine that they put in these Jeeps, and then I'll worry a little bit about the 392. Cooling, is it a problem? Not really, not in the aftermarket, but you know, FCA can make it work just fine. Again, I like to see that. I guess my twist here, though, is that it's still the Jeep. And not that I have a problem with Jeep. Love me some Jeep. There's a Jeep sitting like no more than 20 feet from me right now. The Bronco, I'm hoping that it's as good as it's promised to be. Because right now, as much as I like the Bronco, there's a couple of things that I'm a little bit cringy over. One is the fact that you can't get it with a V8. I was really excited about the Bronco when I thought you could get it with a 5-liter, but now as it sits, the most powerful engine you can get is that 2.7, which is not a knock on that whatsoever. I mean, 400 pound-feet of torque, what's not to love? But, and this is kind of the big portion here, how well is that engine going to do off-road? How well is the aftermarket going to take to it? And more importantly, how will they be able to build a community around that platform, if you will? I mean, you got to think of it like this. Nothing can compare to Jeep, right? I mean, Jeep has a life of its own. We know that. It's been like that for forever. The Bronco, to me, as much as I love the way that it looks, and I think it's got a lot of cool things going for it, but one of the issues that I see is if it doesn't have a V8 option, is that going to turn off some buyers? Now, I don't think it's going to turn off some of the younger buyers, but, you know, there might be some guys who look at that V6, even though it's twin turbo, and go, it's not really going to be worth it. My response to that, or they think it's not going to be reliable, or it's going to lack in power somewhere. It's going to be laggy or something like that. And to that, I say you just haven't driven a 2.7. I mean, torque is instant with those little bitty turbos. With a tune, some aftermarket intake work, a couple of other things, you can get that thing up around 350 horsepower and about 450, 470 foot-pounds of torque fairly easily. And that's, of course, at the flywheel, not to the rear wheels. And with that, that's going to be a very lively vehicle. So on one hand, I like it. In fact, I'm a big fan of it in that respect. But if you're going to be doing a lot with it, you kind of want that V8. I'm a little bit excited about the prospect of a V8 Jeep, but here's the twist. I don't want to have to paper up the way that Jeep is going to want you to paper up for the V8 option on a Wrangler. Have you priced Jeeps lately? Egad, okay? You're going to lose your mind when you see what kind of money they're going to be asking for that 392. Is it worth it? I don't know. It's tough for me to say yes or no to that, but if the Bronco, with as good as that thing looks, by the way, I mean, we're talking nail has struck the head of that hammer in this case. Or should I say the hammer has struck the nail? You know what I'm getting at. Jeep, you got to do something cool. And I am afraid that we may not see that from Jeep. And if it forced their hand, that'd be great. But, I mean, the Jeep's doing good. What is the latest Jeep horsepower rating? It's just adequate. I mean, nobody even pays attention to Jeep power numbers. So it's because they just don't have any power to speak of. I mean, you're not buying a Jeep because it's a hot rod, but for crying out loud, it's got to at least be able to tow a couple of jet skis, right? I mean, it's a lifestyle vehicle, just like the Bronco is going to be. So, I don't know. We'll see how all that plays out, but I'm not holding my breath on that Jeep. And again, are we talking about a $50,000 Jeep? $60,000 Jeep? Just because it's got a V8 option? It's kind of tough, man. I don't know. I'm not just... We'll see, though. Rip saying, also, how's it all? What's going on, good? Got the arm flex, I like it. It's going good. Ryan saying, you should do a video on how to mod your 392. You know, I've done a couple of videos on the 392s. you know, how to mod it, what to do. Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but it's that video would not be very long. Some of you longtime viewers will know that already coming into it, but you know, getting back into it, you know, what works, what kind of power numbers are we looking to get? You know, when I was at the shop, I would do dyno chat, and I would put the 392 up against another car, like supercharged Mustangs, and you know, what to expect with a ported intake, what to expect with ported intake and throttle body, things like that. There's a lot to glean from that. There's a lot to pick up from a lot of those videos that I put together, and all in all, I can tell you that the 392 picks up just fine, mod for mod. But you just have to understand that the 392 is starting out way up there in terms of power. Say what you will about the Coyote, and it's a 5-liter making all this horsepower. You can't compare a 4-valve to a 2-valve, aside from the fact that it's just a reciprocating power generating contraption. But the Hemi makes a ton of power. The 392 especially makes a ton of power for its size. I mean, we're talking about a 2-valve, what is in essence a stroker small block, making basically 500 horsepower. Go through any engine catalog and find me another engine that SAE rates out at what that 392 rates out at. You're not going to find one. Especially not older architecture. You're just never going to find one. And you can look at Blueprint engines, perfect place to start. I should know, I've been perusing Blueprint engines now for a while for a potential replacement engine for Sierra. And the reality is that, you know, a 400 cubic inch engine that is dyno rated at 550 horsepower will do good to make 500 horsepower at the flywheel with an exhaust system, maybe not even with a front engine accessory drive. So you're starting off, the point of this is you're starting off really high, and there's almost nowhere to go with that intake manifold. No matter how much material I take out of that intake manifold, it doesn't remove the fact that those runners are this freaking long, and that creates a problem for making power up top, but it makes a lot of torque down low. It's very snappy, high compression, loves that kind of stuff. But then you get into, well, long tubes, or, you know, the lobe separation angle on the cam just doesn't allow for scavenging except at very low RPM, where you just have actually more time, like literal tick-tock time. So, you know, a video to say what works on the 392, everything works on the 392. It just doesn't work to the extent that most people would hope for, because you're comparing it to an engine that started out so much lower. Basically, Mopar threw a lot of hot rod tricks and some stuff where, you know, some engine builders will look at it and go, kind of cringy. When you look at the cam specs especially. That's what I'm talking about here. You got a set of heads that flow more than some race big block heads would flow 20 years ago. You've got an amazing architecture, although it, you know, stability can be a little bit questionable above 7,500 RPM, but you can get it there. It's just the fact that you don't have the parts to get it there. It's perfectly designed and engineered to move something that's in a straight line from a dead stop, but you know, to get much more out of it, you got to start tearing into it. That's camshafts. Find you an intake manifold. You don't have very many choices there either. Nobody wants to talk about, which is the cost. So just know that coming into it, guys. You want to mod them, you got to paper up, and it's just never going to be like modding a 6.2 LS, like an LS3. You're starting out low. They've got great heads too. Throw a bigger cam at it. Hey, look, we got something to play with. They've got really good intake manifolds. Mopar could learn a thing or two there. Big part of that, though, is that they have aftermarket manifolds, and you're not dragging around big, heavy barges like this. So, anyway. Oh, hang on just a second. Time out. Sean, hey, thank you very much for the contribution to the cause. Next on the agenda shall be tires, that's no doubt. But thank you very much for that, my brother. Also, Manikey's 999, thank you much. Saying off topic, any tip for the first time at the drag strip? My man, that is never off topic. Perfect question, man. So, yeah, I do. Tips. First of all, bring yourself 2, not 1, 2 ballpoint pens. You're going to need them to fill out your tech card. If one of them doesn't work or something goes haywire, you're going to need that thing. Also, if somebody needs to borrow a pen and you lend it to them, don't expect to get it back. Always have 2 pens on you at all time. Second thing, closed-toed shoes. Bring you a set of pants with you. A lot of tracks will not let you run in shorts. Keep you a set of sweatpants or something like that with you. It doesn't, I mean, it's not the safest thing in the world, but if it's hot, you got to have something to throw on real quick. That'll save you from getting punted. Thirdly, make sure you got cash with you. Sometimes concession stands have that paper on you, or you're not going to get your hot dog. If you don't get your hot dog, don't get your chili dog, don't get your Frito pie, you're going to have a bad night. Main thing is this, though. Know the track in terms of where your turnoff points are. Most tracks, turnoff points are to the left. Park is to the right, but know your turnoff points. Also, that is probably the most important part of your entire night. Also, and this goes along with that. Know how to do your burnout. Know how to stage the car. And that's basically setting it up to where you roll into the beam of the Christmas tree, where you set off your pre-stage and then your stage bulbs. One of the things that will ruin a night is if you line up against somebody that doesn't know how to stage their car. Because you can sit there and stage, and you're going for a time, let's say, your car's just sitting there steadily getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter to the point where you almost want to just abort the run. So know how to stage the car. That's a big tip for you. If your car is quick enough, bring a helmet. If your car has T-tops, if it has a sunroof, if it's a convertible, bring a helmet. NHRA rules state that if it's got anything above your head other than metal, you got to have your helmet. But it's always a good idea to have a lid anyway. If you end up running against a car that's particularly loud, the fact that you're wearing a helmet can drown out a lot of that sound, helps you to focus on what you're doing as well. It's kind of the ritual of doing what you're doing. Even if you're running in something that's not that fast, a lid can definitely help you. And not to mention, you just never know what's going to happen. These are machines that you're running down a drag strip. You're putting them at maximum load for a significant amount of time. Never hurts to have more safety equipment than you need. Next, before you go to the drag strip, make sure that all your fluids are at their proper levels. Make sure that your oil change intervals, you're not past, say, halfway through your oil change interval, something like that. Just make sure you got fresh oil in that car, truck, whatever you're running. All of your fluid levels are up to snuff. Nut and bolt it, though. Check it, make sure you don't have any leaks. Nothing worse than having a leak at the drag strip, but the main thing about that is that's another safety concern. Clean the car, not only on the outside, but on the inside. Clean it on the inside because you don't want stuff flying around in there. On launch, there's a lot of G's that take place. Stuff can open up. I've had glove boxes open and just shit fly out of that thing. So you want to definitely do that. Clean the outside of the car, though, too. You don't want to have a situation where you've got just a bunch of crap on your car, you launch the thing, and you dust up the track badly. I've seen it happen, and, I mean, it's tantamount to getting thrown off the track at that point. I mean, tech should never let cars or trucks roll through there that could potentially dust up the track, because that will cause traction issues for the next 3 or 4 guys that are trying to launch there. That's not cool. So, those are some tips. I can't think of anything else really off the top of my head, but I would highly suggest Practice time though. Get out. You know where you live, where you can go out and play a little bit. Practice your launch. Practice your shifting if you got a manual car. Practice going through the motions. I mean, you can do that top bulb, pulling up a little bit farther, kind of inching up with your foot on the brake, lighten up the second stage bulb. Those are things you can visualize and practice on your own, and that'll help you out a ton. That'll help you out more than you know, as a matter of fact. Always be prepared. That's the most important thing. So half a tank fuel when you get to the drag strip. Don't try to cheat your weight low by going light on fuel. It's simply not worth it, because you launch the car, you go into a fuel starvation situation, could potentially have a bad day. So anyway, check out one of my ride-along videos for that. Talk about breaking your own rule. But anyway, awesome question, man. Thank you very much for that. Really, your kid's got the thumbs up. I like it. Vortex saying, how do you tune just the trans? I know you don't have an unlocked computer. I know you don't have an unlocked computer for engine. Well, you can't tune just the trans. They're actually kind of married, but you have two ECUs you're working with: transmission control module and an engine control module. They actually share some duties. So you have to get, when you unlock the engine control module, that will gain you access to the trans tune, the ability to tune the trans ECU, the transmission control module. So you really can't just tune the transmission again by itself, because there's some torque management things you're going to want to look at on the engine side. There's rev limits that you're going to want to look at on the transmission side, engine side, and potentially some knock sensor sensitivity things you're going to want to take a look at on the engine side of that tune, as well as some systems changes you're going to want to make. So, also asking 262 to 309, what can I expect at the track? About a tenth and a half, but you're going to pick up quite a bit of mile an hour on the back half of that track. This thing went from like 126 to 128, 129, just with the gear alone. So, and by the way, I still think these cars should have come with 309s from the factory. Tim saying, I can't wait to see a 2021 Raptor Bronco. No kidding, right? That'll be sick. Xcash saying, but what about the electric Hummer? Yeah, I'm not there yet. Not for something like that. I just can't fall in love with it. Not saying I won't, just not there yet. Christian saying, as a 23-year-old, I absolutely love the Bronco. I know people are upset there's no V8, but I just don't think the vehicle needs it now. It's not a full-size truck. It's a Jeep competitor, and that's a really good point. The problem is, though, is there's a lot. It's got V8 power, though. I mean, the 2.7 is what, 300 horsepower, 300 and something horsepower with 400 foot-pounds of torque. That's V8 power. So, yeah, it's a competitor to the Jeep, but the Jeep doesn't have an engine that is anywhere near that powerful. I mean, not even close. It's not even, so Jeep's going to have to do something. If not V8, then what, really? And honestly, if not a V8, what V8? I mean, obviously the 5.7, but which 5.7? Is it going to be the one out of the truck, which is 390 horsepower, or the one out of the car, which is 370 horsepower? Both of them make basically the same torque. The truck makes more power because it's a variable runner intake manifold. Okay, well, fantastic, but again, which direction do you go? Interesting to see what they actually do with it, because I'll be honest with you guys, if Jeep puts a V8 in the Wrangler, or all the Wrangler variants, truck, four-door, whatever, if that becomes an option, then the Jeep becomes extremely attractive to a lot more of an audience. But I can kind of see their point with not putting a V8 in that thing, because when you look at it from the standpoint of safety, I mean, could you imagine a little Wrangler with a 370 horsepower 5.7? I mean, it'd be pretty cool. I mean, you'd start seeing a whole lot more Jeeps at the track strip, that's for damn sure. You know, from a performance standpoint, it'd be sick to death. I mean, dude, so seriously, 5.7, throw an E-Force kit on it, tune, launch the thing in 4 high. To be a sick-ass fast Jeep. So, and I've driven them. Like I say, I've driven quite a bit of the... Actually, I've driven more 6.4 swap Jeeps than I have 5.7s, and a Hellcat swap Jeep. And, I mean, they're a lot of fun, so, yeah, I say go for it. In fact, it was one of the cars that I actually thought I popped was I was doing a data log on a LS swapped Jeep. It was a 4-door with a Maggie on it, and they were basically relying on a Snow Performance meth injection kit to augment the fuel system to provide fuel mass and octane to keep the thing from blowing up. And I just hopped in it to do a quick data log. I did a full load data log, and injector duty cycle just went like just going, oh shit, get out of it, get out of it, get out of it. And so I was going, this doesn't make any sense. In fact, I thought initially that there was an issue because I didn't have a build sheet in front of me. I thought, oh man, okay, there's something's going on like with a fuel pump, but I wasn't getting a code. So I had a coworker riding with me, hanging on to a fuel. We had hooked up a fuel pressure gauge to it. And so I'm looking over at it, and I roll into the throttle, and I'm looking over at it, and I'm rolling into the throttle, and I'm seeing good fuel pressure. Rolling to the throttle, and I'm looking at fuel pressure going, oh, damn, this thing is hanging this like it's life on this Snow Performance kit. And all I could think of was, if this thing fails, this Jeep will explode. So anyway, yeah, it was one of those deals where you'd roll into the throttle, and you'd have, 75 pounds of, you'd have 65 pounds of pressure, and injector duty cycle was going to like 85 to 90%, just going like that. So that was scary. That was a new fuel system later. Again, thanks for the contribution, Sean. I appreciate it. Sean said, oh, I didn't see it. Second, he's saying stock cam. Long tubes are more of a sound mod, but the sound is great. Very mild horsepower gain until a cam. True. Okay, so let's talk about long tubes here. Long tubes, it's from a horsepower standpoint, from a peak torque standpoint, are not worth the money. There is no real gain there. However, there's a pretty decent gain in drivability, and there's a pretty decent gain in low-end torque. And when I mean low end, I mean from idle to about 3,000 RPM. You'll see a gain in torque. But more to the point, and again, more importantly here, is driving. So if this is wide open throttle, it's at these transitional areas where you're just kind of tapping into the throttle, hanging the thing on the torque converter, as they say. That's where those long tubes will come into their own. I just will caution straight away that there is always a trade-off. And with a cam, with a lobe separation as wide as it is on a 392, being like 121, 122 degrees LSA, and that thing is like this, there's just not enough opportunity for scavenging on the big end, and so you're just not going to get the benefit of the long tubes. In fact, you might even see the horsepower drop down a little bit more quickly than you will with the shorties, because the shorties have shorter tubes. They're dumping into more or less, I mean, these cars, it's kind of funny, they have about a 2 foot long, if you want to call it a, collector between where it dumps into the cat pipe. But it's just got this big volume that's dumping into. Realistically, they just carry power better up there. And so, and again, it's a pairing thing. When you have a lobe separation angle that's that wide, it's wanting to push power up top anyway. Long tubes, unless they're just really big in diameter, they're not going to help you out. So that's where they make the most sense to run on these cars. And just know that when you're coming into it. believe the nonsense that you'll hear. Oh, we picked up 25 horsepower with long tube headers. Bullshit. Not on a 392. You might get that with a tune and a 5.7, but not on a 392. Chris saying, by the way, I love the Wrangler, but let's face it, the Bronco absolutely nailed it in terms of design. Let me just say this. In terms of design, it doesn't get any better than the new Bronco, except for a couple of things. Number one, the look of it is fantastic, but doesn't have a solid front axle. It's not really a deal breaker, but I don't know. Hardcore guys will complain about that. Here's the main thing though. Jeep has been doing retro since Jeep was invented. And Jeep has always been retro. So the Bronco is a nice change of pace. It's a nice flavor, if you will, for that segment. I'm hoping against hope that the cost is not as off-putting as it has been rumored to be. I'm hoping that, because to really be a competitor to the Jeep's already overpriced as it sits. There, I said it. It is. It is as basic and as rudimentary as a tractor. It should not have the price tag on it that it does, especially considering the fact that it is geared as a lifestyle vehicle and it is geared towards the youth market. Youth market doesn't have the coin to throw at a Jeep with the requisite bells and whistles that somebody may want. So there's that to consider. I'm hoping that the Bronco takes a page out of their own book with the Mustang and keeps the cost low, keeps the vehicle attainable, but more importantly, keeps it as upgradable as the Jeep is, or at least aspires to that, because let's be honest, you're never going to get as good as Jeep when it comes to upgradability. Where Mopar fails miserably, and where the aftermarket fails miserably in supporting the 392 and their hot rods, they do an equally amazing job supporting the Jeep brand. If Ford does that, even remotely as well, it will be a home freaking run for Ford. And I'm hoping that it's a home run for a long, long, long time to come. Sean saying, I was talking about the Nittos at the drag strip. Just save them for the street and wait until you get your good drag tires. Yeah, man, I'm not even going to try to play with these things on the drag strip. I already can tell you what's going to happen. On the 2-3 shift, it's going to bark the living hell out of the tires. That's just the way that these things are going to go. But I will say that despite the look of the thing, I actually like the way that the tires work. So they're not as sticky, in my opinion, as the original Tri-5s. They're good enough, and to be honest, you know, once these things wear out, if the Tri-5s, the normal Tri-5s are still available, I may just go back to those. But the big issue that I have with these tires is just the cost of them. They keep creeping the cost up on these things to the point where it gets a little bit annoying. So, but what are you going to do? You can't have a car making this kind of power and not run on some kind of a drag rail. So, kind of got you by the cojones. Some Ferrari guys say, went from an LS3 C6, loved it, but harmonic balancer was starting to go, then went to a second gen 5.0, but intake exhaust tune, got used to it, but now I'm used to it. Needs more mods, the addiction starts. Absolutely it does. Sean saying, is it Saturday already? It may as well be. I mean, look, here, not going to the track, what else am I going to do? So, let's see. Mr. 76 Aspen is asking, is there any voltage regulator that will work on an 06 alternator that will charge it without running the brain? No, I don't think that there is. That's actually an ECU parameter. It's internally regulated, I believe, on the 06. in the ECU. Again, Mankey, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Awesome topic, by the way. Oh yeah, Mr. 76 on an 06 Dodge Charger. I am almost positive that is internally regulated. Let's see. Oh, Shawnee's saying, Mankey, what car, what tire? B Mason will give great info. I'm trying at least. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Frank saying, HP tuners or Diablo, your preference? I prefer HP tuners. It's what I learned for the Mopars, and I speak HP tuners, I guess, a little bit better than Diablo. I haven't really played with Diablo that much. So if I play with Diablo, I might like a little bit more, but like I say, I like HP tuners for now. Ed is saying, how do you love the looks of the new Bronco? Me too. Ford did a good job with that. Had an A5 K5 Chevy Blazer with a 350 that was fun. It was really disappointing with the new Blazer generic SUV. Ditto on that. I had an A5 K10 truck. So I get it. A bit of a bummer that they didn't come out with something cool, but I don't know, man. Leave it to Ford to come out with something really cool like that. Rip saying, I'm trying to collect my tuner, but it keeps saying there are control units in this vehicle that are currently not supported. I have updated the tuner. Do you know what could be the problem? There are control units in the vehicle that are currently not supported. That would mean that, have you licensed? First of all, make sure you got the license correct. Second, believe it or not, anytime I get any error code while everything's hooked up, I literally will unplug the USB and plug it back in and try to run it again. Those are the two ways that I typically get around that. It looks like, though, there are control units in this vehicle that are currently not supported. Yeah, I haven't got that. I don't think I've received that fail message before. That specific one. But try, I know it sounds stupid, but with everything hooked up, just unplug the USB, plug it back in. That might save that for you. Or save you that headache is what I'm getting at. There are control units in this vehicle that are currently not supported. Let's see. Stanley saying, Diablo or HP, what's your opinion? Like I say, it's just a preferred language, really. It's just, what language do you speak, or what dialect of the language do you speak? And again, for me, HP tuners is what I'm kind of married to at the moment. Let's see. Rich saying, I have the unlocked PCM in the Cat. Also updated the Diablo Sport Trinity 2 tuner. Oh, it's Trinity 2. Oh man, I don't know if I can help you with that one, brother. Making saying, Sean, it's a 2019 RT Plus with Super Track Pack. I haven't put a new wheel and tire setup on it yet. Go with the Mickeys. Hang on just a second. Hang on. Oh, C10 Mob, what's going on, man? Thank you very much. Is asking, why do you think we are not seeing more cammed Hellcats? Other platforms upgrade the camshaft and pick up power. Is it worth it? Not necessarily. Not unless you're throwing a lot of pull show at it. Main reason for that is whenever you change the shaft, especially on a positive displacement engine, you're going to lose boost. And whenever you lose boost, in this case, at lower RPM, you're losing throttle response and you're losing power there. And a lot of guys, it doesn't work well with that. In some cases, you put a cam in a stock pulleyed car and it will feel rather sluggish. It may make the same power. It could even make a little bit more power on the big end. The problem is that you're going to probably lose some of that throttle response and that snappiness out of the vehicle down low. That's why the trick is to put a cam in it but pulley it up significantly, because you're not trying to make up for the power on the big end. You're trying to make up for the power that you could potentially lose down low because you've lost low speed efficiency. Keeping in mind that if I'm putting together a cam for a positive displacement supercharger, it's going to have a wide lobe separation angle to make the intake runner as active as I possibly can make it. That's how you build up boost. That's how you kind of crank up that boost response, as opposed to having a lazy boost curve. You want that thing, even with a positive displacement supercharger, it's think of it like if I put a cam in there with too much overlap, I'm bleeding some of the boost. It's not much. It's a small amount, but you're just not going to have that same boost response, especially at lower RPM. So it's not where the car is going to be efficient anymore. It's going to want to try to pull better on the big end. More cam, basically more lift, but primarily more overlap at this point, because lift, not quite as much of a factor. But that's why you don't see as many cammed Hellcats. It just doesn't make any sense to dive into an engine when a simple pulley swap will yield significant gains with hardly any more of the effort. I have put together cams for stock Hellcats. I'm not a big fan of them, but what I'll typically say is if I put a cam together for a Hellcat, it's got to at least have a 10% lower. And even then, they don't pick up as much as you might think. You really have to be throwing the wood to one of these things before a cam's going to help it significantly. But like a 275 upper, and you want to pull power out of it on the big end, you can kind of get away with some things with a positive displacement supercharger, because you've got instant boost. But for the most part, again, that's why you just don't see as many of those. And then CFL James is kicking in. Thank you very much. Saying, best lightweight battery to get for my 1320, Dale or Arc? Well, the problem with Archangel right now is they don't have any batteries. So, at least last time I checked, and a buddy of mine was looking into them, and Nick was needing quite a bit of money for those things in the meantime. So, anything that you can get your hands on really right now is going to be good. So, unfortunately, unless you've got the extra coin or Nick's going to work you a deal on an Archangel, I mean, y'all know how much I like mine, and it fits in the stock well, seems to work great. What's not to love? But, if they don't have them on tap, you're kind of screwed. So, but I would probably say Archangel first, primarily because of this. Cold cranking amps are strong, but it's got a lot of capacity. It doesn't weigh that much. When you start getting into these batteries, you can't, the little bitty ones, right? They just don't have enough capacity to run a cool down feature and to deal with the start and stop when you're in the staging lanes. If you're at a track day, like you're at a track rental and you can get away with it, then the little batteries are good. But in the real world, where we all kind of live and where we all understand that 15 pounds after you've cut 30 pounds really doesn't matter anymore, at least not in that respect. My personal suggestion is to go with the Archangel because of the added capacity. But if you really are trying to get down to the nth degree, then any one of the smaller ones will work. It's just I don't want to give up the capacity of the Archangel. I've actually thought of that before for this car. I could probably cut another 15 pounds out of that battery, but man, that Archangel just has this capacity that you can't argue with. So, but it probably would be worth it to me to have the extra capacity. Because believe me, you're going to need it. Let's see. Let me get back to this. Oh, Hemi saying, follow up on Frank and Stanley's question. You mentioned that Josh does good Hemi tunes. Is that Josh from HHP? That is Josh from HHP. Absolutely it is. Good guy, knows his stuff. Seen a lot of real goofy stuff, and I think he can do email tuning as well. And of course, Alex can do remote tuning. You just have to have all this stuff available for Alex to do remote tuning. But yeah, Josh is good people. C10 Miles, speaking of camshafts, is it worth camming a Hellcat? Yeah, I mean, again, getting back to that, I would rather see pulleys on the Hellcat before I saw just the cam alone. The cam is going to make it a little bit softer, and you're really not going to feel a big difference on the big end because, I mean, first and foremost, what you'll end up with a cam is a car that makes the same power but with less boost. You can pick up some power, like a small, let's say you pick up 15 with the cam. It'll be at a lower boost level, but you're still turning the blower the same speed, right? Why is it lower? Well, the reason why it's lower is because you become more efficient up top. That's the reason why the boost is lower. Yeah, that's a good thing, but I would rather have the same amount of boost with the cam and make even more power. And in this case, you're going to lose about a pound or a pound and a half of boost typically. And again, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it will kind of soften the car up a little bit, especially under partial throttle conditions. Shawnee is saying, B. Mason, auto stock tire 5.7. I will have some good ideas. It's going to require some finesse and some really well prepped tracking in the 13s. For sure you will. CFL got the thumbs up. Ripped is saying, yeah, I turned off the wrong way the first time I went to my track and almost went right back onto the track going in the opposite direction. Yeah, I've seen that happen. I've seen guys get lost on the drag strip before. Himiad saying, summer in Florida is rough for going to the drag strip. Yeah, it is. I've been to Bradenton a ton, by the way. Been raining near every afternoon there at Test and Tune local track. Oh, that sucks, man. Yeah, I used to go to Bradenton once a year. HE37 saying, what Ford is able to do is make cars what the masses can afford and cheap to mod. People bemoan Ford using Turbo 6s, good word by the way, instead of V8s with a tune and about $2,000 in mods, you can make serious power cheap. That's kind of my point. I mean, you can bump them up fairly easily. I mean, they come with turbos attached to them already. So there's that. I mean, I don't want anybody to think that because the Bronco doesn't have a V8 that it's bad. What I'm getting at is it going to be durable enough? And I think the answer to that, well, I know the answer to that is yes. I mean, look at the kind of testing they did with the 2.7 before it was released onto the world. I mean, they kind of beat the living hell out of that thing. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of guys out there in the Ford camp, I mean, it's like 2.7 versus 3.5, man. They get like this pretty good. You know, that 2.7 in that platform, I think is going to be really, really good. And look, Jeep's got to figure out a way to compete with it because I'll be honest with you, it's going to be super tough to compete with a vehicle that is coming to the table with this much hype and this much charisma. So, just my 2 cents on that. Riff saying, even though I'm having a problem getting my tuner working with my new PCM, it's still giving me an option to tune the TCM, so it must be connecting at least. Possibly. And make sure that that's not just a default. Make sure that's not just a default error code. You know, go in there and try to change like your, just pull up like your timing value, a spark table. You know, see if you can add like 1 degree of spark globally or something like that. Save it, see if it saves it. If that's the case, at least you have access to the engine side. It's kind of rare if you are able to tune a TCM, but you can't tune the ECU. Weird stuff, brother. GM4142 saying, still have your Ram 1500. I have a 14 with the 5.7. Like the truck, just hate the 6-speed trans. Wish I had the 8-speed. I don't have my original truck. I've got another one though. It's a 17 Tradesman, which is the base model quad cab 5.7 Hemi with a 323 rear gear. Love the truck. Absolutely love that truck. And it does have the 8-speed automatic too. Riff's checking in. Let's see. Oh, checking in with Sean. Oh, and by the way, GM, as far as the 6-speed versus the 8-speed, yeah, I feel you on that, man. That 8-speed's very tough to beat. Luke saying that I feel like Ford is bringing back the Bronco. The 2.7 is making horsepower and torque numbers that V8s were making back in the day. Let me tell you something. That 2.7 is making horsepower and torque that V8s could only freaking wish for, dream of from back in the day. The Bronco was never offered with an engine, not in the original form. And in the later versions, yeah, you get one with a 460. But originally, the Bronco was, what was it, option with a 302? And, I mean, there ain't a 302 around making those kind of numbers. So, not unless it's got a lot of work done to it. Let's see. Shawnee saying, please, new people with Challenger, first time at the track, don't go with stock tires. You will struggle significantly. Nittos at a minimum, drag tires preferable. So that's a good point. I see a lot of guys at the drag strip with stock tires, and most of them have a pretty good time with it. But it's a good training tool to go out there on stock tires. But only if you've got enough experience on the street to be able to gather the thing up if it starts to spin. Other tips, by the way, if you do start to spin, get out of the throttle. If you're spinning, something isn't going right. And I don't mean like spinning like this. Obviously, that's really when you don't want to be in the throttle. But if you're rolling into the throttle and you're lighting the tires up, you're not going anywhere quick. Back out of it, feather back into it, see if you can gather it back up. If you can't, just motor on down the drag strip. Where a lot of guys get things very, very, very wrong is that they'll stand on the gas with stock tires, light the tires up, and that's typically when things go poorly for guys. If you find that you're not hooking up, the car's not gathering up any speed, because of tire spin, go ahead and get out of it. And another thing, to that point, another tip, going to the drag strip, if something breaks, pull over immediately to the side of the track. Don't drag whatever is going on down the track, potentially. If nothing's wrong, then no harm, no foul. You just run down the track and you're done. But if something did fail, diff breaks, coolant line fails, whatever the case is, you need to be able to pull over so that that mess is very centralized. Dragging that mess down 1,320 feet is going to do nothing but wreck the night for everybody. So, again, courtesy to your fellow racers. Mr. Blacktop saying, if they put a V8 in the Jeep, I would imagine they would need to lower it a little and change the suspension. We don't need another Suzuki mess, telling my age a little bit. Well, here's the thing. The new V8s, especially in that platform, the weight difference, I don't know that it would be that great from a 2.7 with the turbos. I mean, it's a very consolidated mass, but I mean, it's still going to be fairly heavy. The V8 thing, yeah, I mean, obviously there'd be some engineering concerns there, but to be honest with you, it's not really that much different than in a truck or anything else. But if you ever look at the truck, especially with a 5-liter, you crack open the hood, you're like, where's the engine? Oh, it's down there. So yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. And in that respect, maybe the 4-cylinder could be a better option for some. And if you're doing a lot of off-roading, like some significant, serious off-roading, then the 4-cylinder may actually be a better choice for you. So, definitely something to consider. I will say, though, that, for everybody that's given Ford flack about not putting that V8 in the Bronco, there are some pretty good reasons why, and you may have been touching on one right there with the balance of the vehicle being the primary concern. Christian saying, I think Jeep is cool to maybe offer the 392 in the Wrangler, but that it'll probably have a big price tag, 60 to 75 grand, is what I'm worried about. I think with the Bronco being the new kid on the block, they'll have to do better. I'll say this. I think that the Bronco is going to be priced where it needs to be. Now, again, if we start seeing pricing get up around 50, 60 grand, whatever, it's going to be a flash in the pan deal. Look, the people that want to buy that vehicle, that vehicle is marketed to, need to be able to buy the vehicle, okay? It can't be something that's, oh, this is so youthful for people that are, in, mid 40s to mid 70s. It's like, no, I don't need something to, make some old guy feel youthful. I need something that's cool, that's like of my era. The Bronco, if you're a young guy, you're in your 20s, 30s, early 40s, you need to have something that's of your era that's cool. And if they price the thing out of the market demographic that they're shooting for, it's kind of a waste. But I don't see that being the case unless you guys know more about the pricing than I do, which could very well be the case. C10 Mob, man, I appreciate that. Again, and by the way, if you haven't seen my Instagram, you'll see me bleeding all over the Sierra. It's actually closed up pretty good. Nice little divot in my finger. Saying, hey B, can you walk us through your drag pack launch setup at the track? What are your default settings in traction control, on, off, etc.? Sure, love to. So the settings are as follows. Transmission is basically everything is in sport. Suspension is in street, and traction control is completely off. I'm running Dark Stars. I've got 17 by 9.5 in the rear with 305 45 17s. I prefer at my track pressure somewhere around 23 psi, no less than that. Up front, I'll have the 18 by 5.5s. I'm running the 28 by 6 or 28 by 650 Mickey Thompson front runners. They are the SRs. They're the radials that will take basically 95 psi as their max. I run those at 85 psi at all times. And that's the setup. I will launch somewhere around 1500 RPM. And if the track holds it, then that will be pretty much all she wrote. The car will dead hook, and away we go down the drag strip. And as far as anything about does it get weird? Does it do any of the the shuffle, so to speak, that bias ply shuffle? They're all there's radials all the way around the car, so it is incredibly stable going down the drag strip. I mean, you really wouldn't notice the difference between the stability between those tires and the factory tires. Once you're going down the drag strip and you're up to speed, now you shut down, you'll feel a little bit of sway, but it's very, very little. But that's again why I like to run a slightly higher pressure. It also helps to keep the bead seated onto the rim, keeps the rim from spinning too much inside the wheel. And as far as that goes, I'll typically get somewhere around 1 inch to 2 inches every time I go to the drag strip. And that's just kind of comes with it. You get a little bit of rotation of that rim inside the tire, but very, very little. And hopefully that helps. Hopefully if there's a setting that I missed, please let me know. But let's see. Get back up here. Mason K is asking, I didn't oil my valve seals when installing them today. Am I screwed? I don't know. How much did you run the engine afterwards? If it's not smoking, then you'll be fine. And chances are you're probably okay. But I do like to, everything that I have is soaked before I put it on the car. But you'll probably be okay. In fact, you're more than likely, you don't have anything to worry about at all, because those things get saturated in oil pretty quickly. We're saying thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up, guys. Thumbs up. See, Mankey saying, Sean, what type of setup would you recommend? Wanted to run them staggered. Oh, he's talking to Sean. Let's see. Danny's asking, what What's up? Say, what header would you recommend on the 392 for horsepower? Well, I mean, if you're buying a set of headers, go with a set of Cooks. Just my personal opinion, they have the best fit. They, in terms of durability, absolutely the best durability out there. Yeah, they're a little bit pricey, but these are headers. You're absolutely getting what you pay for. As far as how much power you're going to get out of them, again, like I was saying earlier, you're really not going to see on a stock car a lot of a gain there. Now, if you go putting a cam in the thing, that's a horse of a different color. And again, that's really where those Cooks long tubes are going to help you out the most. So, in my personal opinion, Cooks, or if you think they're a little bit too pricey, just keep saving up until you can afford them, because they're well worth the money. Ethan saying, what needs to be done to a 5-speed auto 14 392 to stay neck and neck with an 8-speed 15 plus 392? Aside from trading it in on a new car, I'm kidding, but only a little bit. Basically, it'll work out like this. Tune for sure, 370 gear, absolutely, will be your best bet to stay out in front of or right there with a 392 with an 8-speed automatic. The thing is, though, it's going to be tough. But I will say this. You've got one thing going for you that you may not realize, and that is that you don't have nearly as aggressive gear ratios as that 8-speed does. So, you know, from a dig, if you're both on a drag radial, you can get real aggressive with your car where the 8-speed really can't. You actually have to kind of drive through it a little bit, that potential wheel spin. So from a dig on the street, you kind of have a little bit of an advantage there. But as you're going through the gears, obviously the extra multiplication of that 8-speed starts to really play into the favor of that 8-speed car, and it's going to be tough. But that's on the street. At the drag strip, yeah, I mean, a gear for sure. Make sure you're on a sticky tire, real aggressive launch, good tune, trans tune will keep you out ahead of that stock 8-speed. But the 8-speed's got anything done to it, it's going to be pretty tough to stay out in front of it. By the way, the car that got me back into Mopar was a Signature Series 5.7 Challenger. It's something I don't think I've ever talked about on the channel. It's been a while. At least if I haven't, it's been a while back. The tuning on the NAG 1, just the trans tuning on the NAG 1 from the factory, I feel is better than the trans tuning on the HP 70. The trans tuning on the Hellcats from the factory is really good. HP 70's got some things there's some things to consider there, but I had spent so much time transmission tuning my Lightning. I mean, I had like 50 something revisions on that trans tune just to get everything just perfect. And I ended up selling that truck. Talk about stupid. I should have never sold that truck. Anyway, I had that thing just to the nth degree perfect, and I drove that 5.7 Signature Series with the NAG 1, and it really impressed me with how good of a transmission tune is on that car. So, that being said, don't sell yourself short with the NAG 1. I'm actually kind of a big fan of them. And you got to remember, they were the transmission that was behind the E55, which is a legendary Mercedes-Benz sedan. If you're not familiar with it, there were modified versions of those things running around making 750 horsepower to the rear wheels. I mean, and we're talking those were commonplace back in the day. So, at least down here in Texas it was. So, anyway, getting back to it. But hopefully that'll help you out. Tune, gear, you'll be in good shape. Ned saying, my 2020 Frostbite Scat Pack Challenger is on a train. Very nice. On its way to the dealership. Talked to my salesman today, looking to pick it up next week. Very cool. Congratulations. Shawnee said, I'm going to defer to B. Mason. He's got some great ideas. I'll run 10.5-inch Hellcat wheels on the street with 315 Nittos, and I'll run a 17-inch drag spec wheel with Mickey Thompson's at the track. And that's basically a strong setup. The 315s, be a little bit shy of those, mainly because 315 is more of a guideline than it is an actual measurement, it seems like, with these tires. Perfect example of that is the 305s on the back of my car measure out the same size as a set of 315s used to. So the second gen Nitto is just wider than the previous gen Tri-5. Some good and bad with that. I've got some videos in my opinion of that already. But I prefer a 305 35 20 on the back on the 20-inch wheels on a 10.5-inch wide replica wheel. If you go that route, same route that a lot of guys have gone. It's a good wheel, durable wheel, and they work great. So that's the direction I would go for a street setup for sure. Again, C10 Mob and CFL James, thank y'all very much for the contributions to the cause, guys. I appreciate that. Ned saying, got the Dynamics package with the 275s and Hellcat brakes, red calipers, shakers, 6-speed. That's going to be a sweet looking car. Definitely a sweet looking car, for sure. Thank you very much, Yarmir Yager, man. I appreciate that. Saying our 426 stroker motor's reliable. Well, kind of yes and maybe no, and depends on who built the thing and who tuned it and where you get the parts from and all of that good stuff. Look, in general, yes, they're very reliable. Their longevity on them is just so. Just make sure you're buying quality parts, number one. Number two, take it to a very reputable machine shop that knows their way around the Mopars. And aside from that, make sure you're getting somebody to tune it that speaks fluent Mopar as well. Now, from there, let me just say, having said that, what intake manifold are you going to run? What camshaft are you going to run? These are some, what exhaust are you going to run? All of these things are going to play into how well is the thing going to run and how satisfied are you going to be with that investment. It's not cheap, okay? It's not cheap at all. And I am going to give you some advice here. If the car is paid off, I say go for it. If you can just drop that kind of coin on a stroker kit, then again, I say go for it. If it's not going to put you in any financial duress. But that is a lot of money to put into a car that if you're to just take your car and get a Hellcat, you got a button that'll basically give you the same performance as a fairly streetable 426, and that's just to put one of these in 500 horse mode. What's funny is that this car in 500 horse mode, the feel of it is practically identical to a 426 stroker with a stock intake and a 234 range. They feel very, very similar. So anyway, just word to the wise there. But in short, yeah, they're very durable. Mankey's asking, foot brake or launch control? Foot brake all the way, brother. I would never suggest using launch control on one of these things. It just doesn't work as well as you might think, unfortunately. In fact, I have never used launch control with this car at the drag strip. I like the control that I have by using the foot brake. Let's see. Sean saying, Ethan, if I was you, I spent $4,000 plus to run low 12s with a 392 6-speed. It's some tough math. The 8-speed is perfect for the track. Very true. Mankey saying thank you to Sean. Shawnee say that talking to Ned. CT say, speaking of Blazer, Jim should be ashamed of themselves for not at least trying to get that thing right. They're known for years that the Bronco is coming. Yes, they have, haven't they? See, my thing is this. Gosh, how do I say this? First of all, there's no ram charger, which to me is a real drag. And that's, if you're not familiar with what a ram charger is, it's basically back in the day, it would be the Bronco, like the full-size Bronco equivalent. In Mopar, it would be the Blazer, like the full-size Blazer equivalent with Mopar. You just don't have that working for you with Dodge, which is dumb on a level that I just cannot get to. But you're right. I mean, the Chevy thing, it's just gotten too corporate and it's just gotten too sanitized for me. You know, I get it. The LS, the LS. Well, okay, now it's the LT and it's got its own list of problems. The Yukon or rather the Tahoe, everything's just getting too big, too bulky, too much. And the other thing about all of that is, you know, there needs to be some updates on their end with the engines, because look at how much a Tahoe weighs now, but it still has what, the 355 horse 5.3 or whatever that thing is. It's just gutless, man. I mean, why would you want that for that weight? Now you put that engine in something else and it's a rocket ship, but for what it's going into, I mean, back in the day, you wouldn't even have thought of something that weighed that much without a big block. So anyway, a lot of stuff to unpack there. Let's see. You got Sean and Ned hanging out. Let's see. Alex saying, how am I just getting a notification for this? Good evening, Alex. Hemi saying, been looking at the Archangel 94R battery if they ever come back in stock, but dang, the price on the web page is now $820. Hoping that is just a placeholder or a joke. I think what's happened with that is the actual supply of those batteries is kind of hard to come by right now. And number two, I don't know that it's a joke right now, unfortunately. But a lot of the batteries that he's competing with are kind of up there in price, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense until you consider that a lot of those cells, or almost all of those cells, are coming from China. Lithium polymer, lithium ferrous, which is what the car batteries are, and lithium ion batteries. I mean, those are a lot of those made in China. So there's that to consider as well. This cost of material goods has gone up, brother, tariffs and whatnot. Let's see. Oh yeah, Sean's saying, Ned, you can run a 275 on those 9.5-inch wheels. I recommend Nitto, as do I. I don't like the 305s on the 9.5-inch wide 20s because the aspect ratio is so short, and you get this kind of a funky bulge. Like if my forearms are the rim, you get this like little bit more of a. That's really not a big deal. Aesthetically, they look kind of good, but the problem is that the contact patch isn't all that great. So that's why I would recommend, stick with a 275. You might be able to make a 295 work, but I would probably stick with the 275 for those wheels. Just from a performance standpoint, it's going to be the best bet. Let's see. Ned's saying, oh yeah, I've got the factory 275s. Yeah, I'd go with a set of drag radials for them for sure. And of course, yeah, the color of that thing is awesome. Owen's asking, reasons for a Hellcat over a ZL1. I'm in the market in Old Central, Tejas. Okay, so, well, look at it like this. They're two completely different cars. But if you're talking about Hellcat over ZL1, look, it depends on what you're doing with the car. If you want something that has got a sharper handling characteristic, then the ZL1 is going to be the car for you. But if you're going to be going to the drag strip and you're not planning on spending wheels and tires on it, and that's going to be the extent of your investment, the Hellcat, I cannot stress to you enough the difference between a Hellcat and a ZL1 at the drag strip if we're talking about automatic for automatic. To give you a perfect example of this, and I was surprised by this too, by the way, because I actually like ZL1s quite a bit. ZL1 on a drag pack stock, in this, we're talking the same air, same conditions, we were seeing them go 11.2 and 11.3. Pretty decent number. I mean, it's a quick car. but 11.2 and 11.3. Not quite 10s to it. In the same air, this car, with the stock gear, running on 9 on a drag pack, again, the same wheel and tire setup, more or less, was running 1080s, 1070, like high 1070s. Buddy of mine's car was running 1080s, 1090s. So, and that's full weight setup, Bravado wheel and tire setup, front and rear. This car weighs about 200 pounds more than mine does. So there you have it. So drag strip wise, Hellcat's going to win that argument every single time, tire for tire. But if you're not looking for something that's big and cushy, like one of these Hellcats, and you want something that's a little bit more of an edgy driving experience and something that is still very upgradable, and you're also looking for something that you can do maybe a little bit more with. You know, if you want to do closed course, you're looking to do some more autocross with it, got some back roads you like banging on, ZL1, probably a better choice for that. Although I will say this, I raise all kinds of hell with this thing on back roads, on drag radials, and have a ball with it. But again, it's a bigger car. You're going to feel the weight more. You know, if you're really into that spirited driving experience, Z1 might be a better car for you. I'm saying Mopar, no car. Ned's saying the exact same things I was. Depends on what you want to do with it. And saying both are great. He's just a Challenger fanatic. I would say 95% street, big fan of curves and mountain roads. If you like that kind of stuff, I would lean towards the Camaro. I'm not saying you can't play with a Challenger. And by the way, you know, here at Motorsports Ranch, there's a few guys with Hellcats that are out there breaking hearts left and right. So, I mean, once you get to learn the platform, you can do a lot of really good things, but it's the driver. The car doesn't drive itself. The driver does. And, you know, again, you get really good with a platform. You just get really good with that particular platform. So, yeah, there's one of them in particular, by the way, is known to go around vets regularly with a Hellcat. So, Challenger. For whatever that's worth. But, yeah, if you like the twisty stuff, bigger into the mountain road type of thing, I would probably lean more towards the Camaro, mainly because it's going to be easier to drive in those conditions, easier to recover from, and easier to play with as well. Let's see. Guys that do raise hell with them. Cornelius is saying, do you have any recommendations for gear ratios for the 6.1 Charger? I would probably, if you got a NAG 1, I would say you're going to need to get a Gay-Trag gear, which is pricey, but 370 is the way I would go if you've got an automatic. Ned's saying, Owen's saying, I do like the design lines, but the Mopar Premium is a little steep, especially if you want to start modding. Ned's saying, just try it out. I was saying, rented a 2017 SS1 LE, and it was worlds ahead of my 14 SS. Yeah, no, for sure it is. Yeah, the 1 LE package is a strong running car, very good handling car. Ned's saying Challenger is slower off the line, only on stock tires. Which the 1 LE and ZL1 share tires, wheels, and suspension. Yes, they do. But the power is just, the power difference is going to be huge. Ned's going, and the Hellcat's got the suspension and the brakes. Yes, they do. I was saying, yeah, I was raised in a Hemi. What the difference at low RPMs for torque? Would you say there's an advantage Hemi versus GM to get boost early? The main thing is that this has got a bigger blower than the ZL1. That's going to be the biggest difference there for you. So making the power isn't going to be a problem. It's just going to be the feel of the car once you start to lean on it in the curves. But in terms, power down low, these things are, I mean, you can see it at the drag strip. It just, from the beginning of the run to the end of the run, there's just no comparing the two. In fact, to be perfectly honest, ZL1 at the drag strip, a ZL1 versus a Hellcat, I'd be more concerned with a heads cam intake SS running an automatic with a shot of dope than I would be a ZL1 for the most part. But that's a pretty garden variety way of going, like, you know, mid 10s with a Camaro, like mid to low 10s with a Camaro. So Riff saying, going back to what you said, the tuner won't let me do anything but change one option for the TCM, but won't even tell me what that is. It just says click here to tune as is. Oh, yeah, I say I'll leave the topic alone now, just getting frustrated. Yeah, without seeing it, it's kind of hard to tell, but yeah, that makes it kind of tough. If he's got it locked out, that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds to me like the tuner has locked you out of that. He might let you data log it, but it won't let you do anything with that tune. That's what it looks like it is to me. Let's see. Ned's saying that's a very good question. Oh, I think he's going back to what Rick was saying. Oh, or what Owen was saying. I don't know. Let's see. Thank you again, C10 Mom. I appreciate that, brother. Owen Henderson is saying that's one of the big draws for me to superchargers. Low end and torque early is easy to enjoy within the speed limit, which is why realistically there is not too much difference between the two on the street. Yeah, on the street, it's not much of a difference. I mean, you know, when we talk about drag racing, this is the problem with drag racing. Drag racing, there is, you know, you talk about 2/10, right? 2/10, it takes you longer to blink your eyes than 2/10 of a second. It's like if you blink. Okay, that's like 3/10 of a second. Google it. The fact of the matter is, in real life, that's like a car length. And when you're watching this car ahead of you, or if it's creeping out ahead of you, it's a lot, right? But in reality, it's not. On the street, they're both very, very similar. It just depends on which flavor of ice cream you like better, man. Oh, Rick is asking, just wondering why you run all your settings in sport except for suspension, obviously, compared to putting it all in track. What do you think about sport, or what about the sport works better than track? I like that there's a little bit more slip in sport mode. In track mode, it's a little bit too harsh, and my car doesn't make enough power to take full advantage of a shift that's that harsh. If you're on a like a closed circuit, it might do you some good to just get into the gear that hard, but it's an automatic, and really with any transmission, you want some amount of slip in there. And I've just noticed that when I run my car at the drag strip, it runs a little bit quicker in sport than it does in track. I like driving it in track. I just typically won't run it in track, again, at the drag strip. Just go slower. Oh, Speed Freak's asking, do you drive on the street with the skinny setup? I have, yeah. It's not on that setup now. It's in kind of road trip mode right now. But yeah, no, I just driving around on the skinnies all the time. Drove Shalandra around on the skinnies all the time. CFL James said, did you say 85 PSI on this front? Yes, I did. Not for the bias ply. These are for the radials. So, yeah, don't do that to the bias ply. They'll explode. But, yeah. Oh, there's Mankey saying foot breaker launch control. Always foot breaker. Owen saying, by the way, no, it's hanging out with Ned, saying huge Shaker fan, so good deal. I make you say, oh wait, you can use a launch control with traction control completely off. I've never even tried it. I've tried, you know what? I've tried it a couple of times on the street, and it just didn't go well at all, as a matter of fact. In fact, it kind of sucked on the street. Let's see. Oh, Sean's hanging out with Rift. Let's see. Yarmir was asking about the 426 being reliable. Again, thank you very much. Let's see. Vortex saying, the reason why I asked about the trans tune earlier was it sounded like you were not changing the tune on the engine, thus not having an unlocked computer, so I thought you were just tuning the trans only. Oh, yeah, no. Common misconception, or, yeah, no, you have to, the trans, the ECU is like the gatekeeper, so to speak, and once you unlock the ECU, you then do have access to the transmission. Ethan's asking, why are aluminum blocks better than iron blocks? Correct me if I'm wrong, please. It's not that they're better necessarily. It depends on what you're doing with them. First thing about an iron block is that it's lighter, inherently lighter by the metal that it's used to be made with. So if your concern is weight transfer, and then having 100 pounds less up front is really good for transferring weight to the rear wheels. It's always good to have less weight if you're trying to accelerate, but it's not always better. So let's say, for example, you're building a supercharged application like a Hellcat. You need something that can handle a lot of power and a lot of stress. In that case, cast iron is going to be better because it is a more rigid material. And it's also more forgiving. When cast iron flexes, it just kind of springs back into place. Think of a leaf spring. Whereas aluminum doesn't really like to do that. I mean, there's alloys that will play nicely, don't get me wrong, but you still have to run steel sleeves for the cylinders with that aluminum block. Now, typically, if you're going to make an aluminum block for a performance application, it's going to have a lot more material in it, a lot more webbing. It's going to have a lot more of a bulkiness to it in some way, shape, or form. Again, either through webbing or some other means to get to that torsional rigidity and to get to that just general strength that cast iron block is going to give you. So, freaking bug. That's why typically you would see these larger horsepower applications using an iron block. They're also better for heat retention. The issue is that aluminum blocks can tend to run hot, and that can be a bit of an issue as well. Check out Jay's opinions. I think Herman had done a live chat with Jay, and even Jay was saying about the Elephant, going, look, man, this aluminum block, man, it takes on heat very quickly, and definitely not an engine you'd want to, hot lap. Whereas the cast iron block just simply doesn't have those types of issues. So, for me, it's just, more about what you're going to build. And if I'm building something naturally aspirated, I want an aluminum block. I want the most advantage I can get in terms of power to weight. If I'm building something that is supercharged, I want the most stable platform that I can get. And cast iron is going to give you the best stability out of any of the material that you're going to use. Typically, a high nickel cast iron block will be able to take 1,500 horsepower and not even bat an eyelash. Whereas its equivalent on the aluminum side, might not be able to take near that much power. So again, it's better, but only in the right circumstances. Anthony G saying, finally got to join a live one. Very nice. Saying, bought a Hellcat wide body 6-speed recently. You give me great info and love watching. He loves watching these. Thank you very much, man. Thank you for all the great content. Well, thank you very much for hanging out with us, brother. Congrats on the new ride too, man. You're gonna love it. Shawnee's saying, Anthony, welcome to the Hellcat Club. Absolutely. Anthony's saying, thanks, guys. I love this big girl. Never messed with anything Mopar until now. Glad I had you guys to help. Absolutely. No, you're having a lot of fun with that. And Ned's checking out, too, saying, getting late, early chores. I know the feeling, brother. Yeah, no, you're going to have a lot of fun with that car, man, for sure. Glad you got it, too. Let's see. Ethan Hack saying, Gen 1 Coyotes are the best motor to start out with if you're wanting to build up your car into a 500 horsepower, naturally aspirated monster. People don't know this. I think he's saying, your thoughts on that? The only thing about the Gen 1 Coyote, yeah, you can build some power with it, but you got to watch out oil squirter problems and things like that. But you can build up quite a bit of power. My thing with that, though, is they suffer from all the same problems. I mean, you still need oil pump gears if you're going to want to turn them, and you're going to want to turn them. But the thing is, it's a Ford, and, you know, again, parts interchangeability, and I wouldn't say Gen 1, I'd probably say the second gen. Anything 15 and up is what I would look at. Better heads, better cams, seemingly a little bit better, something to do with the block, if I remember correctly. A lot of the issues have been vetted at that point, and really, at that stage of the game, I mean, you're just a intake manifold, throttle body, a tune, maybe even a fuel swap away from something that's going to make some serious, serious power. So, you know, certainly something to consider. You know, a lot of guys will say, LS. The problem, let me tell you something about the problem with the LS. And I know this because I've been looking into doing an LS swap on Sierra. The problem is this. Let's say I can get an engine and transmission for $1,500. That, you know, I got the sensors, I got the this, I got the that, I got whatever. Let's say it's $2,000. I don't really know the condition of the transmission. I don't really know the condition of the engine, aside from the fact that it may run. The problem with all of that is the costing, if something does go wrong, and it will, the costing at that point is now, call it $2,000 plus $1,000 to fix the trans and whatever I'm going to do to the engine. Now I'm at, let's say, $1,000 here and $1,000 there. Now I'm at $4,000. And you start to back math this thing a little bit, and you go, damn, man, this LS stuff, I thought it was supposed to be cheap, but now I'm into this thing up thousands of dollars, right? That's where there's a bit of a misconception, and why I'm probably going to stay SBC with Sierra, just have the transmission rebuilt, stick with the 400 until the thing just doesn't start anymore. The blow-by just gets to the point where I can't deal with it anymore, and either rebuild it with a set of aluminum heads, one of my cams, and call it good. Make about 450 horsepower with it and about 525 pound-feet of torque if you're to dyno test it. All of that's going to sign off at 5,500 RPM anyway, and this thing will boil the tires until you take your foot off the gas. That is a lot more interesting to me, and maybe do a 700 R4 swap along the way. That's a lot more interesting to me than yet another LS swap. And I get it, they swap them out because they work, but it's a bit of a crapshoot. And if you're going, well, what about vapor lock and all that? Look, put a fuel block on this, on a Holley carburetor with a fuel pressure regulator after the carburetor, treat it like a fuel injected fuel circuit, and I don't think you're going to have those problems. So anyway, put the fuel pump on an intermittent switch, or put the fuel pump on a delay switch, prime it, manually prime it, whatever, you're just not going to have those same problems. Anyway, got a little bit off track there. Vortex is saying, I'm working with Archangel right now on a 13 batteries for our cars that should be cheaper. 13-pound batteries. Okay, cool. Yeah, let us know how that works out, man. That'd be really cool, especially to find out, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, yeah, let me know. I'll test it. I did a 2-part test on his batteries already, and they worked out really well. So, yeah, let's check it out. I have to call Nick and find out. Oh, he's saying he's bringing in everything to make them himself. Well, it makes sense why it would be more expensive. Anthony G saying, I chose the wide body over the ZL1 and GT350, just saying. You know what? And that's the thing. What's cool is that you've got that kind of an option now with Mopar, where there just wasn't that option before. A lot of guys are making that same choice. They're choosing to go with the wide body versus what they may have been considering in the past, like the ZL1 or the GT350. Or the GT500 for that matter. I've got my own opinions on that car. I would say, thanks for replying, Mason. Big fan. Thank you very much. Appreciate the kind words, man. X-Cash is saying, I would love a 2015 Z28 if the price ever goes down. Yeah, you and me both, man. I'm still a little bit bitter about that. And y'all know the story. You know, back when the Z28s were first announced on the 5th gen Camaro, with the 505 horse 427, I was take all my money, and then they came out and they're like 72 grand. Like, I can't afford $72,000. I don't even know what $72,000 is. So that's why I was so bummed out when that car came out. The cost was so high, and they're still fetching a decent coin now. So kind of crazy. Ethan saying 18 manifold on a Gen. Oh, the S197 11 to 14 Coyote literally makes the 5.0 gap at 392 8-speed. Well, yeah, that's not too difficult. I mean, maybe from a roll. I will say that. Let me just put it to you like this. Shalandra never lost a race except for maybe one that I can remember to an NA Coyote at the time. It just wasn't going to happen. There were some close races. I was getting reeled in most of the time, but in the 1320, even with a hole shot, my car would win normally. Again, one, maybe two might have snuck in there, but two only because I'm giving some credit maybe where it's due for Ford, but I raced a lot of them. So to say that it'll gap, maybe from a roll, sure, it'll gap a stock 392. Not that hard to do. And if we're talking about what gaps a 392, a lot of stuff does. I mean, you start talking about modded cars, it's pretty easy to walk a 392. But as it stands, I had a lot of them that were really having hell getting around me in the quarter mile. But if the question is what was the mile an hour difference, that's where things got pretty significant. If I were crossing the traps at 117, they were crossing the traps right on my hindquarters at 119, 120. In some cases as high as 121. So yeah, in that respect, on the street, yeah, if I'm building a car for roll racing, I'm not picking the 392. It's just not going to happen. I just don't have the funds, or I wouldn't be able to justify the funds personally, just personal opinion, for the camshaft and for all the other parts that you would need to make them work. That being said, my cam in Rob's car, the freaking white elephant that it is, put 2 car lengths on a GT350R up in Dallas, and that's from a roll. So lots of things to consider when we're talking about gapping, folks. Machine's checking in saying, your choice of 5 cars you would get if you won the lottery, what would they be? First one would be a 69 Roadrunner. Center console car with a big block. That would be my first one. Second would be to finish up my freaking C25 and get it where I want it to be. Third would be, this is where things get kind of weird. Third would probably be something like an Omni GLH S. I think that would be a complete riot. And it would tickle that front wheel drive, 80s vibe, 80s style hot rod that I've just kind of got a weird tick for. Number 4, I'd have to find another ACR Viper, no doubt about it. And 5th would be left open because I would want to see maybe what I could do with one of those new Broncos. But I don't know yet. I'd have to think about that. I guess it's checking in and saying, what is happening? Got the arm flex. I like it. Even saying, I think the NA Gen 1 is the best. Gen 2 Coyotes are best for boost because they can handle 700 plus. Yeah, I mean, they're all good, man. That's the thing. You got to remember that the Coyote is still the Coyote. I mean, it doesn't matter what generation it is. They're all exceptionally good. I'm a huge fan. I mean, I remember very vividly the first time I realized how easy it was to run nines in a Coyote. And that was eye-opening. We had a buddy of mine's car, pretty basic setup. Whipple, this is going back some years too, but it was a Whipple exhaust tune, the basic generic type stuff. Car run 960s. Now it didn't last too long, but that was still kind of when all of the Coyote stuff was a bit in its infancy. So yeah, you talk about getting your attention quickly. But that car did end up running 960s, and that was a first gen. In fact, that was a 2012. I think it was a 2012. Fast as hell car. Oh, White Knuckles checking in. Appreciate that a ton, brother. Saying, White Knuckles saying, what's up, B? Hope you're having a good night. A little contribution to the cause. Got the 2 fist bump. I like it. Thank you very much for the contribution, brother. I really do appreciate that. Thank you very much. Let's see. Very, very much. Man, I appreciate that a lot. Believe me, it'll be going to good use because it's starting to have withdrawals from going to the track. So new tires are coming. I just got to get Sierra sorted out with her exhaust system and get her trans fixed, get the leaf springs put on, and she will be a done deal for me for a little bit. And then it's going to be back to the track. So here's a good question. Catalyst is saying, asking, what is a realistic price to put on building a 392 to handle boost, parts and installation? So Catalyst, I want to put it to you like this. I'm gonna answer the question by saying this. The 392, if you want it to handle a lot of boost, it'll handle a small amount of boost just fine the way that it sits now. But if you want to throw a ton of boost at it, we're talking 10, 12 pounds of boost on an 11-to-1 engine. Then here's what you do. You take your 392, pull it out. That's 6 hours. You're looking at about $600 right there. Pull the engine apart. That's, I don't know, probably another 6 or 8 hours. So now you're up to, $1,400. Get you a set of file to fit rings. Set your ring gap. Pull the rings off all the cylinders, or all the pistons. Take the rings, square them off in the cylinders. Set your ring gap to 26 thousandths for the compression and for your second ring. So 26 thousandths, 27 thousandths, somewhere around in there. And then put the thing back together, just the way that it sits. So you're looking at, another, say $250 for the rings. Miscellaneous fluids are going to run you another $100. Rinse and repeat. Let's say you're up to like $3,800 at this point. I don't even know what the number is. I'm just starting to pull numbers out of my ass now. That engine will handle a significant amount of boost because you've adjusted the ring gap. The problem with the 392 is the ring gap, more to the point. Now, but for how long? I don't know, because nobody has thought of the 392 in that respect, and nobody's put a 392 together just with the ring gap mod. In that respect, I would say that it will handle a ton of power. In fact, I don't see where it would fail, maybe in a wrist pin or something like that. Maybe the rod fails earlier than it should, but I just don't really know that would happen. So getting back to how do you make it bomb-proof, labor and installation, what's it going to cost? If you want to go pistons and rods, basically, piston rods, rings, MDS delete, stinky tie bars and collars, that whole bit, you're not walking away from that for less than, I'd say, even if you did just an exchange, you're probably looking at 12 grand, somewhere around in there. A minimum of 10. Because you're going to have, at some point, you're going to have machining cost, or you're going to have assembly cost that's going to come into play with the engine if you don't just do a straight swap. Sell the short block that you have now and just buy an existing built short block from, let's say, Arrington, for example. That's really where that conversation has to go, right? So look at it in those terms and kind of make the decision for yourself. But that's really where you're at. And again, nobody's going to take a 392 apart and just put ring gap into it and throw it back together. You're just never going to see anybody do that. But happens with LSs all the time. I mean, guys will drag an LS out of a junkyard, pull it apart, throw a boatload of ring gap at it. I mean, for an LS, 25 thousandths is a lot more ring gap because the bore is so much smaller. But they'll throw 25, 27 thousandths of ring gap at it, throw it back together, and now you have your boosted built short block. Cheers. Throw a cam in it. If it pops, take your cam out. If it's any good, inspect it. If not, it doesn't matter. Basically, rinse and repeat. If your heads are good, your intake's good, you just get another short or build another short block. Anyway, that's kind of the trick. That's why and how a lot of these LS guys make so much power is just because, with stock components, they're just adjusting some factory things about the block to work within a new parameter or series of parameters, I should say, in terms of power production. And the whole reason for that is ringlands pop together, and the second they compress, pop goes your ringland. And 392s have a kind of a shallow compression ringland. So if by that you're concerned with, it's not as much room for expansion, or not as much room for heat dissipation and all that, maybe that's something that you look into. But for Molnar pistons or Eagle pistons and Molnar rods and all of that, but typically that one of those rotating assemblies is going to run you somewhere around, what is it, like $3 grand anyway. So you got $3 grand in that, $3 grand in labor, and about another $1,000 in other miscellaneousnesses. And of course, that's only if you're leaving the stock cam in it and everything else. So again, I would just budget a minimum of 10 grand, and if you get away with less, then you're doing good. Oh, Canada guy's in. Saying, how's it going tonight, Brian? Going well, Canada guy. Looks like a bunch of people in tonight. The old 6-1 is running strong over here. I like it. Yeah, we got a bunch of folks, man. Loving it. Yeah, absolutely. Good hearing from you, brother. Ethan Hack saying, what is the LT1 best at? For the 6th gen Camaro, where do you expect for the Challenger to finally get an update? So sick of Mopar screwing over the NA guys. So what is it best at? I mean, it's a GM corporate the man block. I mean, they're good at being durable. I can tell you that. The LT platform as a whole is just a really solid platform. So in that respect, you can't really knock it. I mean, look, heads, cam, intake, and you've got yourself a real low 11-second car. Actually, more to the point, it's more like a 1080 car with some weight reduction. So, I mean, you can go 10s with that thing the way that it sits. They do really well with RPM. Valve train is more stable than the Hemis. It's got a lighter valve train. That's part of the reason for that. So, you've got some things working for you with the LT. It's just it's starting out at a lower level. Again, cam really wakes them up. The heads flow like crazy. And really, the LT intake's really good too. So, I don't know, long tubes, a cam, a tune. You're already well on your way to a pretty stout combination. Mike Crow's asking, what is your estimated best case horsepower for an NA392? Tune cam, throttle body headers, heads maybe. I would love to get 500 to 550 rear wheel horsepower with a nasty load. Well, that's the thing. I mean, 500 horsepower is pretty easy to get to. I've got a cam grind that in a 392 doesn't have any lope whatsoever, and with long tubes and a ported intake manifold, in this case it's on E85 on a dyno jet, is making right at 500. So there's that. The problem is it's not the horsepower with a 392. That the big issue is, where do you want your torque to go away? I mean, you're going to be giving up torque eventually at some point. You basically take that same engine, that same camshaft profile, and use, say for example, the Holley intake, that shorter runner intake, or even the Edelbrock intake. You'll pick up a little bit of power and might lose a little bit out top, but you pick up some mid-range. But I guess the point of this is, if we're only talking about the engine and you just want to throw a bunch of money at it and try to get a big number out of it, you're going to be up against it just a little bit. I mean, you're going to need, obviously, springs, cam, probably a ported set of heads, Holley intake, and the cam itself is going to have to be put together to take advantage of that intake. Stanky tie bars and collars to try to keep your valve train somewhat stable. A cam somewhere in the 594 on the intake side, probably 574 on the exhaust side. 113 degrees of lobe separation angle, an intake center line of about 110. And all you're going to be doing is you're going to be dragging that power all the way to the right, or from y'all's point of view, all the way to the right on that power curve. But you're going to be giving up torque in the process. It'll sound nasty, but and you can probably get the number out of it. Just know that the only place it's really going to make that power is out on the big end. But it can be done, and it's been done quite a few times. Yeah, like I say, and obviously it also depends on the dyno that you're on too. But dyno jet making 500, not that hard. 550, you're going to be making some compromises somewhere. 500, the cool thing about 500 is that you can have a cam that, with the stock intake manifold, gives up nothing in terms of drivability, torque production, partial throttle, power across the board. You can definitely get there. It's just that extra 10%. You know what I mean? It's that extra that is so hard to get past. KSK saying probably 480 on a dyno. Yep. KSK saying, I asked this earlier, but it was rather busy at the time. I installed valve seals on my 392 today and didn't oil them before. Any chance I need to redo it? Oh yeah, no, we touched on that. I don't think so. I think you'll be okay with that. Let me ask you, has the engine been run? If the engine hadn't been run, I would go ahead and pop it off and, soak them in oil. If not, then I think you'll probably be okay if it's already been run. If you start to notice it smoke a little bit, obviously get in there and redo it, but I think you'll be okay. Ethan's asking, what's the deal with the new GT500? I've seen Palm Beach Dyno get their car to 100 rear wheel horsepower with bolt, or 1,000 rear wheel horsepower, I think you're saying, with bolt-ons on the stock supercharger. That is insane. Also, thought on the new Hellcat Super Stock. So here's the thing with the new GT500. It's not, look, I typically will only hear about the things that go wrong with some of these cars, and they have run into some problems with GT500, which, look, I don't know how widespread this is, but some of the problems I think are more one-off situations. But, just ask multiple Mopars. But here's the thing. I don't know what the deal is with it, because I'm at the drag strip about twice a month. This is my Friday when I'm not at the drag strip. Let me just tell you guys this. The next GT500 I see at the drag strip will be my first. I have seen more Corvettes, the C8 Corvettes, just tooling around on the road. Like, hey, look at that. I've seen more C8 Corvettes on the road than I have seen any GT500s. I've seen a handful just out in the wild, not at the shop, just out in the wild. I've seen 0 GT500s. I can't tell you what the deal is because they're nowhere to be found. And not for nothing. I mean, look, if the GT500 is an awesome ass car, then even better for it. I'm just literally blind to it at this point. Haven't seen one, don't have an opinion of them. I've never seen one in the flesh, so I don't know what the deal is, man. And that's a weird thing, because down here in Houston, it should be teeming with GT500s. Nobody wants to show up to the drag strip with them. Stock, modified, doesn't matter. Just haven't seen one. Let's see. And then asking, what are my thoughts on the new Hellcat Super Stock? Brother, I gotta tell you something, man. I am not the biggest fan of the Super Stock, not because there's anything wrong with the Super Stock. I think that if you're gonna raid the parts bin for a car, keeping in mind that the Super Stock doesn't get the, first of all, it doesn't get the high octane computer programming. That's fine. And it doesn't get the Hellcat, or I'm sorry, the red eye hood. It gets the normal snorkel red eye hood, Hellcat hood. That's fine too. But aside from that, it's basically a demon. And I gotta tell you, I'm kind of ho-hum about it. Because to me, it's not a super stock car. Because, and I'll tell you why. First of all, if you're going to harken back to super stock is referring to super stock drag racing. It's a class in drag racing. The song Little Old Lady from Pasadena, the car that she had was a super stock Dodge. It's a lightweight version of the car. It's a stripped down version of the car. All of the super stock classes, whether it's the Ford Thunderbolt, any of the 409 cars, the 413 or the Max Wedge 426, any of the Max Wedge cars or the 426, all those are all super stock cars. That's really where the legend, the true legend of muscle cars comes from. I mean, if Chevelles and just start picking, your iconic, muscle cars were the branches of that tree. These are the roots, okay, so to speak. To me, it's a bit of an affront because there was never in the annals of muscle cardom, there was never a supercharged super stock car. That wasn't the point of it. To me, what would be super cool as a super stock car, which would have blown my mind right off of my neck, and I would probably be the first guy in line with his money flapping around, going, just please take my money, would have been to have a 1320-esque car, aluminum block 426, high compression, with everything that the 1320 has going for it, except with the crate from the Demon. 540, 550, 500 whatever horsepower, 426 in a car with the crate, narrow body with lightweight components on the car, but still have it be street legal. It can't be a drag pack. That's not super stock. It has to be a street legal, insurable, titleable car. That, my friend, would be a super stock Dodge for the modern era, and that is what I could have gotten behind 110%. But alas, we get yet another Hellcat-sized variant of the car. And I'm supposed to get excited about it. And I'm supposed to be all enamored with the idea that, oh, it runs 1050s. Well, am I supposed to get excited about that? When? Because this thing runs 1050s in with the same wheel and tire setup that car would have. So I can't get all that excited about a car that runs 1050s when you just got through telling me that the Demon just a couple of years ago runs 960s, and nobody's really ever done it in the wild. Maybe one person. They did it in obnoxious DA. Same way all of them had to be running obnoxious DA to cover the number. It's not a second slower than the Demon octane for octane. As a matter of fact, super stock might actually be a little bit quicker than a Demon on 93 octane. Just depends on the altitude, or it's at least as fast. Most of those are doing good to run 1020s and 1030s in really good air. I know this from experience. And that's on 93 octane. I guess the point, if I'm answering the question at all, if I haven't skirted it enough, is that I'm less than enthusiastic about that car than I am about, well, let's take it a different direction. Okay, so let's say we have to have a supercharged variant, a super stock car, if you will. Why is it a wide body? And why is it that it can't come with a set of Dark Stars in a crate? Why is that the case? Why does it have to have a stock transmission tune? Why can't it be optimized? Why is it that there is so much that is just not super about the car? It's a stock car. It's not really a super stock car. It's just a stock car. You say, well, it's got drag radials on it. Well, so does the 1320. They've already ruined the marketing behind that, by the way, saying that it's the only muscle car with drag radials. Well, the 1320 would like to argue that point a little bit, considering that it's available today while that marketing was put forth, and you can say that it's a 2020 versus 2021. It doesn't matter. If the marketing exists today, then you're stepping on the 1320 on your way to make your message known. It's in poor taste, if nothing else. And once again, they're pissing off their core constituents. Not a good look, Dodge. So anyway, I made my point. I'm hoping I did. Ken saying he's got a 91 Spirit. Bad to the bone. Mason K saying the engine has been run. They didn't leak. Very good. Very good. Yeah, as long as it's not smoking, I think you're in good shape, brother. 3500 Savoy saying, do you have Instagram? Yes, I do. BA Mason 721. Although I will say this, messaging me on Instagram, probably not a good idea moving forward. That's something else I wanted to put out there. I get a lot of messages on Instagram. I try to answer all of them, but they can get a little bit long-winded and they can be a bit distracting. I've had some guys complain that I haven't responded to their Instagram or their messages. I really am not responding to that many Instagram messages anymore. And I've actually made it known to most, especially if I'm thinking about it at the time. Just, you know, if you want to check out Instagram, that's great. Drop me a line every once in a while. That's fine. Keep it during business hours. You know, if I can, I'll get back to you, but don't send me stuff. If you've got little questions here and there, cool, but don't send me stuff that you think I might like, because there's a chance I might not like them. Let's see. Uh, 3500 Savoy. Oh, yeah, what's up, man? Say, I'm the guy's little brother who has the RT Charger you met at Royal Purple. Very cool. Hit me up when you get free. Cool. How you been? Doing good. And yeah, that's actually another thing. It's a lot easier to get a hold of me through the channel too, because I'll answer your questions straight away like I'm doing now. Cal9 saying, I think the 60s version of the Super Stock means modified lightweight production car like the 68 Dodge Dart 426 Hemi. It's also like the 64 Savoy was a big one, the 62 Impala, 66 Galaxy 500, 64 Galaxy 500. Those were the type of super stock cars that I'm referring to. Not all of them were necessarily lightweight, although they kind of went in that direction. The Pontiac had their Tempest, which was at that time a trim level for the Le Mans, so you had that as a super stock. Basically, it's more or less a sedan than anything else. Primarily because of the concept of a pony car, it really hadn't been around long enough. These were, engineering exercises more than anything else, and just winning races at the local track meant that you were solidifying street cred in a very real way. And this is back when you could get away with street racing too. So, most of those races didn't go for more than a couple hundred yards. A quarter of a mile was considered a very long race. But then you get into the super stock era and sanctioned tracks and sanctioned events, and that's where you really see these cars, stretch their legs in a way that, was, the stuff of legend, and that's why we have these legends today. Interesting side note too, asking about that super stock thing. That super stock nomenclature is referring back to the song. It's referring back to the Savoys of the earlier era of drag racing of the muscle car. I'm not even sure though if there was ever like Sox and Martin, I think, had some super stock Cudas, and they had some Challengers too, but that was through Sox and Martin, which was almost like a factory backed race team. Anyway, just kind of getting ahead of myself here. Let's see. Let's see. Machine. Oh, they're saying this is the third time asking the streams because you can't remember. Hopefully this time you do. Do you know of any import tuners in Houston? No, I don't, actually. I don't know of any of them. Again, what was it? That place off of 59, I can't ever remember their name. Eurotuned is the one that I'm thinking of. And that's the only one that I know of in Houston. But that's more for BMWs and Mercedes. Let's see. Jerry's got a good question. Saying, with the Demon and Super Stock now, why didn't they put 18s on the 1320? They didn't put 18s on the 1320 because the 18s that they engineered were 11 inches wide to go on the back of a car with a wide body kit. The 1320 is a narrow body kit, so that's the reason why. Although I don't know where the problem is as far as narrowing up a set of wheels, the aftermarket doesn't seem to have a problem with that at all. So yeah, just ordering up a set of wheels shouldn't have been a problem. It should have been what was available to that car, and again, it wasn't. You could only get them in 20s with the Nexen drag radials. And I'll never understand that. Also, hey, Machine, it depends on the type of car that you're talking about tuning also, because I'm not familiar with the Japanese stuff, but like I say, Eurotune can get you taken care of if it's a German car. Let's see. Let's see. 3500 is looking for a shout out. What's up, 3500 Savoy? T saying, be any plans come fall to add a performance mod to Revlon? For some reason, I want to see her clip off a 990. So that's the big question, man. I would love to see a 999 fly underneath that banner. I have toyed around with the idea of putting a race gas tune together for it. The only thing is that it kind of takes away a little bit, in my opinion, from the general spirit of this car, which is to be able to have an all-weather, all encompassing tune that runs on 93 octane gasoline. But I get it, you know, I mean, I'd be kind of cool to see if I could get it to run nines, or how close can I get it to nines. To put a race gas tune on the car isn't all that hard. The problem is all of the data that I need to get to leading up to January to do it right. As opposed to just making a call and saying, hey, I need a race gas tune for my car, and then loading the file. I'm doing all this myself. And since I'm doing all this myself, and I've actually kind of done this before with race gas tunes with these cars, by the way, at least at wide open throttle, they're not that difficult to work around and not that difficult to work with. It's just that every single one of them is different. And to that point, every time you start throwing timing at it, you've got to know that it's going to make a little bit more noise, going to rattle a little bit more, and you got to start dialing back your knock sensors. All that, again, is fine when you're on race gas, like true race gas. But to put those tunes together can be a little bit pricey. So what I may end up doing is just throwing a couple of degrees at it, throwing some 104 in it, and calling it good. And if it picks up, cool. But we'll see. I don't know. It's possible. And you know how it is when you start kind of getting bored with things, or you kind of want to shake things up a little bit. I may choose to, instead of throwing more power at it, keep it as a 93 octane tune, because to me it's more impressive when you're on straight 93, and maybe look at some areas where I can reduce some weight. And I think that weight reduction would be better. It's easier on the car. I think that would be a place that would be better served to try to play with. We'll see. I just would like to see how far I can, I don't know, sink the hook into some folks with my 93 octane tune. Let's see. Caliside I say, would love to see a modern version of the Ford Torino Talladega, although with a 351, a Ford buyer might be confused between that and the Mustang. Actually, I would like to see something along those lines myself. The only problem is, this is just the head scratcher. Ford doesn't have a B body the way that Mopar does. In other words, I get it. It's a Challenger. It looks like a Challenger, right? But it's the size of a Roadrunner. It really is. Bigger, really, in some aspects. Certainly weighs more. But I like the larger cars. I've always liked the larger cars a little bit more. They just, for whatever reason, that's what gets me, where I need to be. So what I like to see, what I would like to see, is something like that Torino, or something like that bigger body muscle car come from Ford. Although it'll never happen, they would do it, and they would do a hell of a job at putting one together. Chevrolet, unfortunately, for me, the Impala, right? They ruined it. Again, they turned it from a legendary nameplate, something that actually meant something to a lot of folks, to this front-wheel drive thing that just sucked. And you look at the GTO, you look at the G8, these are all Holdens, good cars in their own right, but they're never that pure American car the way that the old Impala was. The Caprice Classics, the big cars, the Impala Super Sports from the mid-90s. That was a really neat car. It doesn't necessarily have to be that big, but I'm just saying there's a lack of that, and it's too bad. I just don't think you can anymore. I don't think you can, because safety regulations and fuel economy regulations and all this other stuff, I just don't know that you could, or at least don't know if you can get away with it. But man, I don't know. Dodge has been getting away with it for a long time. So anyway, I get it though. I'd like to see something along those lines. My thing is this: I'm tired of looking at SUVs. It's just another truck, and with some housewife, looking over the steering wheel, driving down the road. I'm just not there with it. I'm just tired of SUVs. God, and then you got the crossovers too. Like, I'm a little bit car, I'm a little bit truck. It's like, no, man. So, yeah, it'd be cool to start seeing some sedans. I just don't think we'll ever see it again. But at least not anytime real soon. TU saying, very cool, can't wait. Oh, talking about me and my quest to, again, just my quest for 93 octane dominance, right? Huh. Which is funny. You would think I would take it a little bit more seriously, but there's guys out there. You have to understand something too. There's guys out there that will nth degree their cars. I mean, we're talking about weight reduction to an extreme level, right? And when I'm talking about weight reduction, let me tell you what I'm thinking of. Okay, I mean, I'm thinking of maybe a different brake and rotor setup. Get some weight out of it. But let me tell you something. When it comes to the interior, I need my car to have a car interior, a street car interior, not a race car interior. And so there are limits to what I will personally do to get the car to run a certain number. However, I will say this: if this car ever runs a 10.0 anything at the track rentals this year, bet y'all ass that passenger seat's coming out of the car. I don't know what it'll get us, but I mean, it'll be lighter. That's the point of it. So, but the bumper supports thing, I know that there's guys that'll throw lightweight bumper supports at it, jerk the door cards off, speakers. You start down this rabbit hole, okay? And I've seen kind of the ugly side of where that ends up. And to you, I got to tell you, man, I got a street car, not a race car. And for me to strip it to get to a certain number, I just don't see myself doing it. And not that there's anything wrong with it, but when I looked at the big turnoff for me, by the way, or at least the most enlightening thing, and you know the story, was when I was at Legion of Demons last year, or technically this year, in January or February, whatever it was. I'm at Legion of Demons, and these guys have got their cars gutted. And I mean, I just went on, I couldn't help it, man. I went on a half manic rant on, are you kidding me? I'm messing with this poor kid whose dad or uncle, whoever he was, had him, dragging parts of the car over to the trailer. Basically, they were in the process of dismantling the car, all in the name of weight savings, to try to cover some number that we still don't even know that actually exists. The point of this is, at what point is the car no longer the car? Let me put you a different way. If I'm going to take a car and I gut all the stuff out of the interior, basically make the interior the same color as the outside of the car, which is to say no carpet, no headliner, no nothing. Everything that's underneath the car, you can see the paint underneath in the interior. If I am to gut the car to that level, have I gone far enough? I mean, then we can look at ultra lightweight front and rear rotor setup, full on drag setups that don't weigh anything. Is that gone far enough? I don't know. Lightweight bumper supports. There's another 40 pounds right there. Is that far enough? I don't know yet. Let's start to consider other things we can take off the car. What if I take off the hood? What if I take off the fenders? What if I take off the doors? Those are heavy. You see what I'm getting at? At the trunk lid, at some point, it's the Hellcat cart. When did it stop being a Hellcat, and when did it start being something else? That's why, for me, I don't. There are levels and there are points to this Hellcat experience and during my journey with this car that I don't necessarily want to get beyond. This car doesn't have a tune for 100 octane fuel because it's a street car. Yeah, okay, the Demon's got a 100 octane tune. Why don't I put a tune just to, because the Demon came stock like that? That's a valid argument, and I can get behind that argument. But when it comes down to it, I kind of like the idea of running as fast as I possibly can with all Mopar parts that have been optimized to work together. And it was designed to run on 93 octane. We're going to see how much damage we can do to the competition on 93 octane, all while maintaining a very safe tune in the process. And that's really the goal for the car. So it is as tempting as it is to start leaning in that direction of race gas. Then it's like, okay, well, remember what we were talking about with removing parts of the car? Instead of race gas, shouldn't I really be on E85? Because on E85, I can seriously turn up the timing and not have to worry so much about detonation or fuel mixes or any of that other nonsense that goes into messing with these. Because now it's, well, if I'm running race gas, what race gas is it? Is it 100 octane, 104, 109, which is basically 103 octane or 104 octane? Am I running Q16, C16? What kind of race gas? That's where the weirdness comes into play. And it, between that and stripping the car down and everything, I could probably run mid-nines with it. But again, it just takes away from the overall general value of it being a Hellcat as opposed to it being a race car. And again, getting back to the whole fuel thing though, yeah, I mean, I could go to E85, and because that would be a smarter play. But then I got to go fuel pumps. That's outside of the Mopar only requirement for what my goals are for my car. So, as nutty as it may sound, that limiting factor of 93 octane helps to protect what I'm shooting for. Only in that I don't have any other option. Give Injected Engineering a call and twin pumps find their way into this thing, then you know what's coming next. That's Echo, Ocho, Cinco all the way. But and until that bug bites me, she's going to be hurting everybody's feelings on the good old 93 octane. Jamie Town saying, are stanky tie bars and collars required for the sniper cam in a 392? I wouldn't say that they are required, although I will say they are highly recommended by this guy, the guy that put that cam together. If you're going to be wailing on the car after you put a cam in it, you're going to want to try to keep that thing as stable as you can. It's not so much the first, second, third, or 10th time that you hit it with one of these things. It's the constant stressing of that valve train. And so I like the stanky tie bars and collars. They keep everything basically locked in place and doesn't allow for any real movement, which is, again, why I always recommend them strongly. And TU saying, I'm with you on the redundancy of the SUVs. They're just not sexier, nothing sexy or exciting about them. Exactly. Only SUVs like the Durango lineup and the Jeep SRT lineups make my mouth water. And that is a sentiment that a lot of folks will clearly follow. I mean, it's just another SUV. I mean, the Durango is cool because it's a Durango and it does cool Durango things like have a 392 and now a Hellcat engine, but a 392 is good enough. Same for the SRT Cherokee and the Trackhawk, same ideas. But you start looking at the Tahoe. I mean, like I say, Dodge doesn't have anything to compete with the Tahoe, which to me is still like kablam. I don't understand that a bit. But there's just nothing that, how am I trying to put this? There's just nothing that excites me, again, outside of the Mopar stuff and maybe an X5 or something like that, that does anything for me that is an SUV. Now, you start looking at the cars, and yeah, there's a lot of cool cars that are out there. But again, you can't really sex up an SUV. You got to remember that an SUV is just a remarketed branding of a tradesman's vehicle. So it's either that or, you know, it's marketed as a family vehicle. Okay, well, great. You know, it's I don't know. The SUV thing is just kind of weird. It just doesn't, I don't know. It's just in weird taste. I don't know. Just my 2 cents in with it. It's not, and the thing is, it's not even a cool SUV. It's not like an old school Wagoneer, or it's not like an old school Suburban. You know, it's not. They're all just kind of, I don't know. It's just they're just transportation devices for, you know, families and kids. You know, they just, I don't know. Machine's asking thoughts on the Jeep Wrangler 392. The first thought is I doubt they're going to make it. They need to have a 5.7 Jeep Wrangler before they have a 392. Second thought, if they do make it, the cost of that thing is going to be astronomical. So, in that light, the power increase, even if it is a 392, 5.7 needs to come before the 392, or at least in concert with it. If the pricing is going to be so far out there that you don't even look at it, because there's no place to even bargain with anybody when you're talking about 65 grand or whatever for a Jeep, which is ludicrous. When the Bronco is out there, and if the pricing of the Bronco is, say, 40,000, and it looks like that, and it does Bronco things, then the Jeep, I mean, it's like, the extra power. At some point, the extra power doesn't sell the vehicle. At some point, as a matter of fact, you'll have some guys saying, look, I don't want that level of power in that type of vehicle. There's that contingency out there, especially guys that are, you know, just more into regular off-roading. They may not necessarily have a use for that, or they're going to see it possibly as a liability, specifically because of overheating. That thing's going to have some cooling mods like you wouldn't believe to deal with some of the stuff these guys are going to put that engine through. So is it going to be able to manage that? And especially when you consider the fact that leading up to this, the Jeep, unless you're taking the aftermarket into account here, the Jeep has been notoriously underpowered but overgeared for that reason. You know, you underpower it, throw a lot of gearing at it, a lot of cooling capacity for the power output. I mean, it's a farm implement. It's designed to sit there and just do nothing but run for weeks on end. That's the idea behind them anyway. It's a military and a farm piece of farm equipment. So to say that a 392 is going to be so much better for it, I mean, yeah, I guess it sexes it up a little bit, but there's already a huge following for Jeep. And here's my point on this. I don't think you're going to get guys to buy a Jeep with a 392 that wouldn't already buy a Jeep with a 5.7 in it. The biggest criticism with the Jeep is that it has been underpowered, especially lately, primarily with the four-door Jeeps. I think it's a travesty the thing doesn't have a 5.7 in it. But, again, I just don't think that you're going to get a huge section of the population so worked up over Jeep with that engine. I mean, it already doesn't really have competition, and it's already overpriced in the marketplace for what it is anyway. Start tarting it up with, you know, a 392 before you've even brought in a 5.7, and it could actually be off-putting a little bit for guys. So anyway, let's see. Oh, and then she's asking, how do I think the 392 Wrangler would compete against the likes of the Bronco? Well, that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. I don't necessarily think that for that type of a vehicle that it's ultimately necessary to have that type of an engine. Let me explain. Okay, so let's look at it like this. Let's say they do make it with a 392. Doubtful, but plausible. They hook a chain to the ass end of it and do a four-wheel burnout the same that they did with the Durango. Okay, neat, but pointless. If that Jeep has a crazy suspension, like a rock bouncer type of a suspension, something that is, King of the Hammers style badass from the factory, or something along those lines, some type of an upgraded suspension set up to where it can handle the extra power, maybe it gets a little bit of pub there. But again, we go back to the dollar signs. I am convinced that you could probably buy a Bronco for yourself and probably a Bronco for one of your buddies for what that thing is going to cost with a 392, talking about the Jeep. It's just how I see it. The Bronco is aesthetic point of view. The thing's a freaking work of art, especially in the two-door. It is a damn good-looking vehicle and will be very comfortable in the four-door, and let's be honest, will probably be more ergonomically positioned, better ergonomically positioned than the Jeep. Driven a Jeep lately? I say there's one sitting about 20 feet that way. I'll tell you, it's not the most comfortable. The Bronco is going to be more comfortable. It's going to be more user-friendly. It's going to have a power plant that makes sense for the size that it is. Still relatively upgradable. Like folks have already mentioned, I mean, you can take the 2.7 and throw a couple of grand at it, pick up another 50, 60 horsepower, 50, 60 pound-feet of torque. You're making some decent V8 numbers already. Take that into account, plus, again, how upgradable is it going to be? I don't know, guys, but I'll tell you this, my boys. If they're going to start standing behind that thing the way that they stand behind the Broncos running around in stages of being hot-rodded or being stopped. The Jeep, on the other hand, probably won't be there. And, again, they don't even have a 5.7 variant for that thing. Add to that any issues with reliability. I don't know, man. If you're asking me to put my money on something, I'm putting my money on that Bronco because I know where the Bronco is going already. Let's see. Hope I didn't miss anybody. I don't think I did. What's funny is that sometimes I'll get somebody say, "Oh, you passed me up," and I'm like, I never even saw the message. But that being said, a lot has been made about the Bronco versus Jeep thing lately, and as much as I cannot stand the whole journalist take on this, I have to admit that in this particular situation, I have to kind of agree with what a lot of the journos are saying. This is a car, truck, what have you, that is going to put Ford, in my opinion, going to put Ford on the map in a whole new and exciting way. Assuming that we get this thing in the guise that we have been shown on Motor Trend and everything else, if that is how we're going to be receiving this vehicle, it's going to put a hurting on Jeep sales for sure. It is a brand new platform for the aftermarket to play with, and it nips at the heartstrings of people of all ages. In that respect, not only has Ford hit a home run, but they've resurrected a look of a vehicle that nobody has even touched on, which is the trucks. The Bronco in this case. Remember, or the PT Cruiser or the SSR, which we choose to forget. But this is something wholly different. This is something that when you look at it, you go, damn, that actually makes sense. In that you can take the top off of this thing. The FJ40 from Toyota, which did a great job of stylistically mimicking the original, did a horrific job in that it had nothing really in common other than some stylistic cues. The Bronco gets it right in every way that the Jeep gets it right. And will it be as hardcore as of an off-roader? No, it's not supposed to be. And really, when you look at the underpinnings of this thing, it is pretty much just a Ford Ranger. But it's really not. It's a Ford Ranger-based vehicle that will, because of the styling of it, carry Ford into a future that they didn't have access to before, which was the not muscle car guy. This is a spot where Dodge and Mopar in general, if you want to look at it from this point of view, has done a very good job, is when you're done messing with the muscle cars, every muscle car guy goes to Jeep. It kind of goes like this: muscle car, Jeep, possibly a truck, maybe a boat. But when you move away from muscle car, you get sick of all the whatever with that, the Jeep, the 4x4 crowd is very appealing. And that's where Dodge has done such a good job. Jeep owners clubs are littered with ex-drag racers. So, and current drag racers. Ford didn't really have that. They had Ford, and then they had Ford guys that bought Jeeps. Now Ford can keep those guys in their own camp, and they've got something that they can look at and be real proud of. So, I don't know. Whereas before I wasn't riding as high on that thing, starting to ride a little bit higher now. So, for what it's worth, excellent job, Ford. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. We are coming up on just the other side of 2.5 hours. I want to thank everybody for hanging out. For you guys that were generous enough to contribute to the cause, thank you very, very much. Know that it is very, very much appreciated. I will look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. And until then, God bless, stay safe, and that is a wrap. Adios.